Hi, I'm Bob Alvine, the owner of the Premier Auto Group in Connecticut. We have 3 stores, 2 Subaru stores, one in Branford, Connecticut, one in Watertown, Connecticut, and a Kia store in Branford, Connecticut. I've been a retailer for 20 years. Prior to that, I was actually in the banking industry. So I made the jump from an industry in which everybody believed everything I said until one in which they believed nothing I say, so to speak. I first met Viking Equipment and Joe Schomburg about 17 years ago at this point. Prior to that, I was using factory programs to try to buy equipment and found that, ordering it from a catalog or trying to get served a glass of wine at NADA while you make a decision was the way that they did business. I wanted a little bit more and a little bit different philosophy. And I came across Joe, and Joe was a referral from several other car dealerships. And I actually called, for references once they were a referral, and to say, what was it like working with Joe, or how was it like working with the Viking organization? And so I began a relationship with Viking Equipment. In the beginning, it was very much so one of lift inspections or needing a new piece of equipment here and there. And I always found Joe to be honest and high integrity, and the equipment arrived when it needed to be. And if we were in need of service, it was something that we needed he would get right away. But as we've matured as a company, we've matured in our needs as a company. And about 6 years ago, it started to be, hey, we have to plan for new buildings. About 6 years ago, we entered into the planning phase of our new Kia store. It's a gallery facility, which is Kia's highest level of branding for their brand. And so we had different equipment needs in that Kia store, different planning needs. And it's funny, I found that when you work with architects and they draw service departments on paper, or they draw whatever, it really doesn't help as to like what's a tech going to be like when they take a tire off, or how far do they have to go for a piece of equipment. And so I found that I worked with Joe and I worked with Viking on that, and I found that Joe had some very innovative and interesting ideas about equipment placement, and maybe we can do this and this will save a mechanic from 3 or 4 steps of having to make, or this is going to deliver a part from the parts department that much more effectively. And so we built our Kia store, and now it's been open for about 5 years. And we've seen how those layouts have helped our service department. We've seen how the decisions we made and said, well, one day we'll be able to grow into this, or one day we'll be able to do that, have already happened. And so I brought Joe in when we were in the designing process of our Subaru store. And our Subaru store is 40,000 square feet in Branford, Connecticut. It was a 5-year project. We almost immediately went into design after we finished our Kia store. And really, obviously, when you look at a 40,000 square foot building as a dealer, it's a daunting task. It's not only financially riveting, and it's a big investment. And so financially riveting, but while you're trying to operate your dealerships and make sure your personnel count is there, or hire and fire managers, or whatever else it might be, there's a lot to do, and the design process is a full-time deal. And so in addition to the architects and the engineers, I brought Joe in. So almost like you had your architects, you had your engineering staff to do the HVAC, you had your outdoor people to make sure that your plot plans are right and all that. Well, Joe's the equipment side and the shop layout side. And that made a huge difference right out of the box when we were looking at things, so that we could right size our tool rooms. Where's our tire balancers going to be? Are they going to be out in the shop? Are they going to be in the tool room? Do we want customers to see them? Are they going to be closer to one tech and not closer to the other techs? Our alignment racks, our quick check systems in our drive lanes. How does that all interact? And then our parts department. Oftentimes as a dealer, that's kind of like the last department we look at. For some reason in our 20 groups, when you go, The parts department is the department that rarely gets talked about. We're always talking about our new and used car departments, and our grosses and new and used car department, or our service, and then the footnote, oh yeah, then there's parts. Well, our parts departments are so important to the operation of our service department that sometimes we forget about that. And Joe helped me at least to remember how important that department was. How do we lay that out for maximum efficiency? How do we lay that out to make sure that the staff we have can handle what we have, and we don't have to hire additional people because we're not efficient, but we can make the people that we have that much more efficient. And so Joe became an integral part of the design team. And it's funny because we must have talked design for a year before we ever talked about a piece of equipment. And so it wasn't about, hey, look, I want to buy a piece of equipment, and or going to the NADA where they're like, oh yeah, no, we'll design it. They're not in the store. They're not in the market. They don't see the dirt or the property or what our current operations are to be able to make a design. Sure, anybody can make a design. But is it a design that works, or is it like going to Home Depot and having them design your cabinets when they'll come in and they'll never really know what you're reaching for? It was different. I mean, we spoke for a solid year with architects, engineers, with dealing with our layout of driving things around, where our parts getting dropped off, before we really even decided like how many lifts or how much. What were the lifts going to be in the shop, or what type of lifts did we want to have? And so it really was important to the overall construction of our project. Joe had some absolute determined ideas about what we needed to do with our parts department, and we followed through with that. I'm glad we did. If we followed through with my idea, quite frankly, and that of the architect, it would have been undersized day one. But it's not. It's perfect. And so we built the store. We worked with Joe and then identified the equipment that we needed, identified the placement of that equipment. I found that Joe and his team attended every single job site meeting that we had, and those job site meetings were weekly. And when you think about your first few job site meetings, they're only moving the site around. I mean, you don't even have a foundation. And yet, Viking was there to learn and listen and make sure that what we needed to happen, or their ideas, would carry forward. Or what about that for that alignment rack? Or what about that for that brake lathe? Or something along that line. Or for that parts bin. And so we proceeded. Our project was a year long. Viking was at every single solitary job site meeting. They weighed in constantly as to what we needed to do or what we should do, gave us suggestions. Ultimately, in many things, you think you're going to spend more, you actually spend less. Because the idea wasn't about spending more. The idea was making it something that you could be proud of, making it something your employees could be proud of, making it something your customers were wowed about, and making something that was efficient. And that was the most important thing. So we are following the same step because we're building a new building in Middlebury, Connecticut. That's 31,000 square feet for Subaru. And again, Joe's been involved at the beginning. Just about the day in which the last screw was put in our Brantford store, we went on to deciding our Middlebury store. And so those of you retailers that know about construction projects know that I'm pretty much a glutton for punishment for 3 stores in 6 years. But it needed to be done. And so we've got Viking at the very beginning of that store. And because we've been working with Joe now and working with him, the process is really even easier. Now we know how to lay things out. His efforts in our Kia store, his efforts in our Subaru store in Brantford taught our architectural staff things. So when they did the plans, their plans were better. Our engineering staff's plans were better. The lighting plans were better. So each of the buildings we've done, things have gotten better because it's more focused around the department and the square footage in our building that is honestly going to give us the highest return, and that is our service and our parts department. And so without question, that has been something that has been a benefit of us. And you know, and obviously when we look at spending money on a building, and you know, as dealers, you love to go into a beautiful fancy showroom, but a car sitting on tile isn't making you gross profit. The lifts in the back, the parts department, everything is making your gross profit, is making you more successful, is helping your retention, and helping you deliver more cars because you're set up for it. And so Joe's really a partner on the design team. And I know, and I have confidence in him and confidence in his installers and what they do, that I know I'm getting a great value. I know that he genuinely isn't doing this to sell me a piece of equipment. That's what those catalogs that come in the mail from the manufacturers, that's what those tool guys that drop you a business card that say, oh, I want to sell you tools. Joe's not about that. I mean, he truly is about making this a long-term relationship. So you have an equipment guy. So as a retailer, yeah, you know what? I have a contractor that we can go to. I have my accountant. I have my lawyer. I have my benefits person. And I have my equipment guy. Because we can't afford to have anything fail in that shop and not generate income, especially when you're doing buildings and when you're increasing your overhead. That becomes more important than anything. And so I really am over the moon happy with Joe and his entire team in helping us design something that I can be proud of, and that is proven to be something that is financially beneficial to us as well. With equipment, obviously, they're pieces of machinery and there's failures. So it's important to also align yourself with a company that has the ability to make those failures, address those failures and solve those failures as quick as possible. And so one of the things that I really, really like about Viking is that they have the parts and inventory. I know that they have a huge warehouse full of parts, and I know that because we've had mechanical failures at our 3 stores, whether it's a lift or a brake machine or a alignment rack or something along that line. And his team's, the Viking team, is out very, very quickly and typically has the part in stock for us to be able to repair that. You know, from my 20 group and spending time, I know that the average service bay generates somewhere in the name of, you know, $16,000 to $20,000 a month in revenue. And so therefore, you can't be out 1, 2 days or a week on that bay waiting for someone to get you a part. Right then and there, you need it fixed. You can't have a flat rate technician walking around looking for something to do and no place to do it because the lift's down. You have to have him productive. You have to have them working on something, and moreover, you can't tell your customer that you can't fix their car because your brake machine is down. And so, you know, who you go to needs to have the inventory in stock so it's repaired right away, it's repaired right, repaired without hassle. And it brings your overall stress level down. I've had those days where the compressor fails in our own building, old building, and you can't use a lift, you can't use an air tool. Next thing you know, what's going on? And thankfully we had a relationship with Viking because they were out identifying the problem, providing a loaner compressor of ours needed something they didn't have, or it was more of a catastrophic incident, and we were able to get those cars back, stress levels back down, and really just address the customer's issues.